Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we have a very, very interesting guest. We have on Chris Green. Now, Chris, part of what makes you interesting is you've been able to survive being a CRO in 4 different organizations. And that in and of itself is a major accomplishment. So congratulations there. On top of being a dad of 4, married, avid runner, all these great things. But what we're going to talk about today is the battle you've gone through many times. And I think you and I talked about this before. There's rarely a problem that comes up that you haven't addressed, right? And what we're going to talk today about is transforming internal chaos, misalignment internally within the organization, specifically at the C-suite. How do we transform that into sustainable revenue engine, right? That's a big topic. So I hope you're ready.
We'll see. We'll find out, Steve, quickly.
Before we get started, I'd love to just have you explain a little bit more about your background, please.
Sure. I decided to go down an entrepreneurial path. I made that decision, I guess, as any entrepreneur would say, about 22 years ago when my wife and I were first starting our family, and she declared we are going to stay in South Florida. So for me, the first problem I had to solve is how am I going to build a career in South Florida and, progress through, at that time, the corporate ladder, right? So that was the very first problem I probably started solving. And that took me down this path, like I said, starting 22 years ago at this point.
Well, that problem solving capabilities, let's put that to work here. The first thing I'm going to do is, there is such a atmosphere of hurry up, but then go nowhere syndrome inside of most companies. And when we say hurry up and go nowhere, right, it's not like we're not people that are intelligent. We've progressed through our careers. We've had exits, right? We've done amazing things. But part of that hurry up and go nowhere is we lots of times have different directions that we all think we should be going. And I'd love for you to kind of unpack that in a way. And then we're going to talk about potential solutions as well.
Sure. So for me, when you talk about that, Steve, what I hear, what comes to mind is the founders I've been privileged enough to work with, as well as the boards or PE firms that have backed those companies I've been a part of. And the reason that comes to mind is typically, I think that's where a lot of people feel the pressures from, or, hey, hurry up and get a result or achieve an outcome. And for me, what I've learned or what I've taken away in my experiences is, look, you have to have a process and you have to celebrate the process and you have to really understand what's going on in the process because you can never control the outcome, right? And so my focus has always been, okay, how do I have a great process in place to be able to give ourselves the best chance to win, essentially, right? And I take that back even to my youth where I was competitive in sports, and the coaches would always tell you, look, you can't control the scoreboard, but you certainly can control what happens on every play, right? And how hard you play and how well you execute whatever play they're asking you to. And I think that same thing is true in every company I've been a part of. It's like, there's going to be challenges along the way. There's going to be things that come up that are unexpected. I think the key is communication, accurate and timely communication, right? Of what's happening, what are you thinking, and what are you going to do about it? It's one thing to tell me what's happening. It's another thing to tell me, hey, here's what I'm thinking to do about it. So I think that's bringing the solution to every problem is part of the process that I've found to be key. And then communicating that amongst your team, amongst your board, amongst your founder, whoever it may be. All of those things are part of it, Steve, for sure.
So complete agreement with what you're saying here, right? Because we live in an environment where it is always chaos. It's always transforming. Our ICP is always in flux and changing. There's an environment that is always changing. I've talked to so many C-suite executives. They're like, the 5-year plan's a joke. We don't even do these anymore, right? Like, who can tell what's going on? So the thing, though, about identifying the problem, we can never stop doing that, and articulating solutions. It's almost like there's so many problems, we're constantly problem solving, and so many solutions, every department, from everybody. We're all smart people, right? We've risen up in our careers to the point where we don't have to ask anybody. Like, we know this is what we need to do. But when everybody has that, here's what we need to do mentality, we got a bunch of leaders with a bunch of different directions, right? How do we bring that together? And in fact, you and I talked about this. There's a study that, I've talked to so many C-suite executives, and I asked them the question about what the greatest challenge to long-term sustainable growth is, and they say internal alignment. So in this always problem solving, always having to have solutions, how do we stay in alignment?
Look, you bring up a huge topic, right? Especially in privately held companies. I think so often anyone who starts a company starts off with a clear vision of what he or she may want. And they believe that's the mission and the objective is consistent with that throughout the lifetime of the company. I think that the more success every company has, the further sometimes it gets away from that original mission, or the founder or C suite may no longer understand that everybody else in the company doesn't really connect yet with the purpose or mission of the company. Usually that's again comes back to communication. It's like, people want to be a part of something that matters today more than ever, right? And how do they understand what the company's there for, what the company's there to produce, other than just giving them a job? It's really making them a part of that process. And, every company I've been a part of, there's been a gap where a CEO or a founder or the C-suite in its entirety will feel like, oh yeah, everyone knows. No, no, no. And then you go and you do a poll, someone from HR will typically send out a random poll and ask people, a series of questions that can see if they actually connect or understand it. Not 9 out of 10 times, but 10 out of 10, Steve. People come back and they don't understand or they're not connected to it yet. And there's a misalignment. You're right.
And misalignment starts at the top. But, there was a gentleman that we had on the podcast, and he had a PhD, and he was a chief people officer. And he proved the formula we all know, we all head shake on, is that engaged employees equal engaged customers equals revenue growth for the company. And what you're talking about, he did a thesis on this for his PhD. And what you're talking about, that communication, it keeps the company in the same direction, but it keeps them in the know, right? We're not going to be engaged when we have no idea really what the direction is. And that sounds crazy, but you illustrated it well 10 out of 10 times, right? We can't over communicate the mission, the direction enough. I mean, that's my takeaway from what you're saying. Is that a good takeaway?
I think that's right. I've recently been reading, how Amazon is going through a transition right now. Even Jeff Bezos led it one way, and now Andy Jassy's leading it a little bit different way. And people are seeing the changes and then acting accordingly to what they think may be appropriate based on what they're seeing the vision or the mission of the company to be. And that's not unique to Amazon. It's true in almost every company, right? Whatever actions are taken leave an impression on people as to, hey, how should the rest of the company work? And therefore, how should they fulfill their responsibilities within that framework? So that tone has got to be, you said it, set at the top. It's got to be set every single day consistently. People are watching, people are learning and listening to what you say, what you don't say, what you do and what you don't do, and then acting how they think is appropriate from there.
You brought up Amazon, and it reminds me of something. They're lauded as one of the most customer obsessed companies in the world, right?
Right.
They have this empty chair policy. And it used to be during, like in physical meetings, there'd be an actual empty chair. Now there's a virtual empty chair. But about 8 months ago, I interviewed a CX executive from Amazon. And that policy or that vision is still alive. And it's like you could be in an operations meeting, you could be in a marketing meeting, a sales meeting, and that chair represents if the customer were here with us today, how would they be directing our thinking and the decisions that we're making? And so when we talk about misalignment, what that tells me when I hear that is there is only one voice of authority in the business, right? And it's the customer. And if there's anything that aligns an organization, it's the challenges of the customer, right? Truly their challenges and their needs. So yet the McKinseys of the world. I was reading a study, only about 15% of companies have a dedicated voice of the customer program. So it's the kind of thing that through our normal business processes, we are in interaction with our customers, sales environment, customer success environment, right? But that deep knowledge and understanding of a voice of the customer or surveys that go out, how important is that for creating this internal alignment? Like starting with the definition of the ICP itself.
I think it's extremely important, right? There's nothing more important than to hear from it. However, I'll throw a twist in there, maybe even a challenge, right, Steve? It's like, I think if companies start off by defining the wrong target markets, meaning going after and getting the wrong customers, you could be listening to the wrong voices too, right? Only because your product or your service may not fit or may not be best for that target market, but because you're a young company and you're trying to serve everybody, right? That's very typical. You expand a product capability set or you expand a service capability set and you say, oh, I can do that too, right? Because you want to grow your business. That's not necessarily growing your business the right way though, right? And that's part of like the strategic planning a lot of teams I've been a part of talk about is what are the right ways to grow? And a huge part of that's okay, what are we good at? What are we uniquely good at that we can bring to the market that's valued in a different way than anyone else? And defining that becomes extremely important too, right? And then defining the markets and the segments within those markets that are best suited for the products or services that we have to offer and we're extremely valuable to offer, that's important so that you can truly then go get that voice of the customer the right way.
Absolutely. We can't spend enough time defining who that customer is and then listening to that customer.
That's right.
We had a woman, she was a 3-time B2B CMO. She is a value accelerator advisor with Goldman Sachs. And her perspective is that as C-suite executives, we need to be spending at least 20% of our time talking to the customer, that we become very disconnected from the customer themselves. Yet we're leading the charge for the organization.
I'll tell you what, I say this, all the time. My favorite time in business is it's almost like when you're, young and playing sports, when you're in the game, that's the best time, right?
Yeah.
Nothing else
Yeah.
matters. It's almost like a place of Zen. I feel that same way whenever you're in front of a customer. It's okay, all the other problems, all the other challenges, or whatever it may be going on in life no longer matter for that period of time. The only thing that matters is being in front of them. So it's one of my favorite things to do is be in front of a customer, listening to them. How are they defining their goals, their objectives, their challenges? What are solutions they're considering? And having that conversation, that two-way conversation between them and our team members, I think that's like a perfect place.
It's a place where innovation starts too,
It
right? I
is.
mean, we think we have proxies for those conversations because we have more data about our customers than we have ever had, right? And we can live behind that data. And we're not saying data's bad. That's not what I'm saying at all, but I'm asking your opinion, right? Like, it's easy to hide behind that data and say, we know we have all these intense signals. Like we have so many signals coming at us from the marketplace and indications of what stage they're at and what they want. But what's the balance between that and actually that conversation that you're talking about?
I mean, my argument back whenever I'm told that exact thing, you hear that often. Oh, we know everything about the customer. Well, do you know what they're thinking about the future for their company? Right? Have you had that conversation? Like, what are their thoughts? What are they considering as the next thing for them? And I think that's typically an open topic that's not addressed. It's more, hey, this is what's going on today. And we have a lot of data to show us about this is what's happening right now. But what's next? How are you going to solve that? Like, what are you looking at that you're concerned with? These are things that are sometimes seen as uncomfortable, maybe, or not urgent, but they're absolutely critical in importance. And I think that human element, it's almost kind of like working with AI, right? Like AI is great for 70% or some percentage over 50, probably. They can do a lot of creation, but it doesn't solve everything. You need a human, you need that interaction or that conversation.
You're right. Human in the loop is like a big thing in AI. So you and I can coin customer in the loop.
Customer in the loop. I like it, Steve.
Customer in the loop. We
Absolutely.
got to have the customer in the loop. All right. We're going to trademark that, you and I. We'll start a new company. Okay.
Perfect.
So, one of the things that I wanted to kind of transition this to is from this absolute focus on the customer. Everybody needs it because you have a point of view that everyone is a salesperson in the company.
I do. I think everyone has to be. We cannot afford to not have everyone being a salesperson in a company. Everyone should be able to have that 30-second conversation with their friends, their family, their neighbors, people at a cocktail or social gathering of some kind. Like, what do you do? What is the company you're a part of where you spend the majority of your life? What's their purpose? What are they here to accomplish? What are they here helping, society solve? Right? We all should need to have that speech, that communication ability and understand it. I think it goes back to also what you and I were talking about before. Is everyone clear what the mission of the company is? Right. And that's what it really shouldn't be to me. Oh, we are I don't know, accounting firm. No. What are you here to solve? What does that do for people? And I think that's how people connect best, in my opinion.
It's amazing. I run a podcast in the HR talent industry, and people want, I think you said it earlier, they want to have a purpose. They want to be at a company that they feel has a purpose and they want to be a part of that. It's a reason why they want to get up and be a part of it every single day, right? And so if you feel like that, you're going to become a natural salesperson for the company.
100%. Look, I don't know somebody who doesn't go home to their family or their friends, and their family or friends don't ask them, what do you do? What is it that you do? Right. And I think the day of telling somebody I'm an analyst or I'm a C-suite exec, that's boring. Right. Like my kids tell me all the time, Dad, you're somebody who's on the phone all the time, listening to people and solving problems. That's what I do. I think at the end of the day, that's what they tell me I do. Because in a kid's view, it's very honest and very clean.
Yep. Yep.
And I said, you're absolutely right. Like, I have to listen more than I talk, and I get to help people solve problems. That's a privilege that I enjoy. Right. And you get that, or you gain that privilege, in my perspective at least, is through years of experience of making mistakes and seeing other people make mistakes and learning from those things, and being able to share those experiences with people today is an absolute privilege. So, and that's what I try to explain back to them, right? Like, it doesn't start that way. You have to learn first and have to experience things first.
You know, a bunch of stuff in there I would love to talk about, you just said, but one thing in particular, you said, I have to listen more than I talk. And if you look at like surveys from and results from Gong, who, researched thousands and thousands and thousands of sales calls, the rep talks 2/3 to 3/4 of the time.
It's not good. I mean, look, I haven't dated in a long time, but I understand in any relationship, I want to know about you. I want to know what's going on. Who are you? What have you done? What do you want to do? Right? What are you doing right now? What's most important on your mind? That's the same conversation is super important with all the humans that we're interacting with at other companies. Just because we're at work does not make that any difference. There's an old saying, like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And it's very true. And you have to be genuine about it. It can't be something that you're just doing because you're told to do or you read in a book. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't ever work out. Right. But if you genuinely care, then you're going to genuinely ask questions. You're not going to talk about yourself.
Oh, you keep dropping these things. I love it. People don't care about what you know until they know they care about you, right? That's a quotable moment. I just wanted to call that out. I love that. And I love that listening and getting to know them, that ties right back to what you're saying before about that's getting to know the customer. That's the voice of the customer, the true voice of the customer, right? Because if we just talk at them about what we do, they're only going to reflect back our conversation. But if you're willing to be open-ended a bit and ask the questions and just listen, oh, the amount that we can learn, right?
For me, Steve, that's no different. I have to just take a second and maybe digress, but like the conversation we started earlier about internal chaos, right? Like, why do we have that? I think it starts with not taking the time to get to know each of our fellow colleagues that work together, right? And it's like, oh, this person is just coming in to fill this role. Well, you don't know if that person is the future CEO of the company or not. And it shouldn't really matter, right? But like, who are they? Why are they here? What do they want to accomplish? How can I help them? Those are the things that are going through my mind that I want to understand. Like, I was listening to a chief of police talk, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago here in Miami. And the chief has been there longer than I've even been at work, right? And, which is quite some time at this point. And he was saying, look, I don't hire people, I hire their families. And I think that was a really important point. He's like, I want to know all about their families because this is a way of life that they're choosing, not just a job. And I feel like, a lot of that sometimes gets lost in corporate. I'm just going to use the term corporate America. And it's really true, right? Like people are giving up of their time and their energy every single day to help accomplish a mission that somebody else started. Okay, well, who are these people? Who are the people around them? Get to know them, understand where they're coming from and where they want to go and where they are today. And I've found if you can do that, it becomes a lot easier to connect the mission of the company. And a lot of that alignment chaos goes away too, because people all of a sudden they give the benefit of the doubt of everything they hear or see in a positive way versus maybe another avenue.
This makes me want to ask a question you and I haven't even talked about before, but like
Bring it.
words like mission, value, culture, right? These are things that like mission values, they can be a plaque on the wall, a page on the website, right? It's like the word value, right? You've got to sell value selling. Like, okay, let's break that down, how important it is. Retaining the right people we know is the top performers. It drives everything in the company, right? It's, we could have the best product, the best service, but if we don't have the right people to execute it, it doesn't really matter. It's why PE firms, VCs invest in the people first. That what brought this up is that police officers think, I'm investing in that family, right? I want to know that family. How important for our conversation today is the kind of culture that you have inside of the company that not only attracts the right people, but retains the right people.
I think it's everything. I mean, my wife teaches our kids your vibe attracts your tribe, right? Like that's what she says all the time. And I think it's really true. Who are you? What energy are you putting out there into the universe? I'm going to get a little bit, wacky on you maybe for a second because that's kind of part of my mindset in life too. But like, I believe if you're not taking care of yourself, meaning physically, mentally, spiritually, just your overall self health, then how can you possibly have the right energy in the universe to attract the right kind of people? Right. For me, that's running. For me, that's surfing. For me, that's exercising. For me, that's spending time with my children. If I don't have those things, then I can't be a good version of myself. And therefore, I will naturally attract something less than I want to attract to the company or to whatever I'm a part of. And I think that's true for all of us, right? Yet we don't think about that. Like, oh, are we putting our employees in a position that they have to commute 2 hours each way and work 12 hours each day, 5 days a week? And yet we expect them somehow to be the best version of themselves.
Right.
How's that
Right.
possible? I don't believe
It's
that's
not.
true. It's not. Or you're going to attract a certain type of person who can do that. And then we wonder why there's not alignment or chaos or the energy or the culture isn't there.
Yeah. And all these employees, they're interviewing us these days in that, the other podcast that I do in the HR and talent acquisition industry, they're like, oh my goodness, culture, go back 10, 15 years ago. Nobody even talked about culture as impacting the ability to acquire the right people, the right top performers. And now he says it's almost everything, right? It's almost everything. So I want to get to two more questions. They're the two most important questions I'm going to ask today. So here's the first one. What haven't we covered? right? Our topic is dealing with all this chaos, right? And how do we turn that chaos into a sustainable revenue machine? Like, what do you want to have time to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I think we've touched on the human element a lot. I think we probably have to touch on appropriate expectations and budgeting. I think as part of turning a company into a revenue machine, I think that's critical, critical topic. I don't know. Anything else on your mind, Steve, that we haven't talked about yet? I'm trying to think as well, but
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The human element, right? The alignment, but how do we stay in alignment, right? Because if we work to get there, as humans, we are resistant to change. We just are, right? And so we want to live in a known environment, right? But in business, that's just not the case. It's just changing all the time. COVID pulled the rug out from all of us, right? AI is changing everything. The self-service B2B buyer journeys changing everything. So the norm is chaos and change. And so not only get in alignment, but how do we stay in alignment? Let's just say that we can get in alignment. How do we stay in alignment in that kind of an environment?
I think first it comes with accepting that change is constant, right? Like we have to accept that. That is true. It always has been true. That's not the rate of change has significantly increased, I believe, but change is the constant. That's at least in my lifetime, I've never seen it not change. It just changes a lot faster today. So I think in all of us talking about, why are things changing? What are alternatives that are possible for us as a company, us as a group? What are those possible alternative paths that we could take as we see these things as continuing to happen, right? Or with these pending changes, what are the possibilities? I think having open and honest conversations with people that acknowledging that change is happening, acknowledging and discussing potential alternative paths that we could forge forward with, soliciting and being really open to conversation or input from the company as to, okay, what about this idea or what about this direction? I think all of that together is the key, right? You mentioned earlier, I'm a father of four, right? If I've had any success in life, hopefully it's raising good kids. That's the most important thing to me. And I think one of those things that I found is communication. And it comes back to bringing them together at a dinner table. We eat at a kitchen countertop a lot on bar stools because it's just easier than a dining room table. We're not formal like that. But having them come in and out and sometimes actively participating, but sometimes just listening to the conversation and having that on a regular basis is meaningful. And anyone who's ever raised teenagers, especially a teenage boy, I would say they don't communicate a lot. There's not a lot of words. It's a lot of grunting and a lot of like head down, right? But I think they're still taking in a lot of what's happening. And I think that same thing's true in a company. It's having regular sit downs, and I'm going to say sit down, but conversations about all that's going on. People want to know, people want to hear. And just as the rate of change has increased, the rate of communication has to increase too. It's no longer a monthly or quarterly town hall, right? It's like that was good when change was slower, but today change is constant and it's fast. So, how often do we need to communicate? As often as we can, quite frankly, like in a meaningful way too.
I've never met anybody inside an organization that said, "Stop, you're communicating too much. You're bringing me into the fold too much," right?
And that doesn't mean more email. More email is not the
No,
answer, right? Or another
no.
Slack channel or another this channel that no, 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 no. This means like real conversations throughout the organizations. I don't care how small or how big they are, which comes down to, again, being able to have people that are a part of it that you've attracted because your vibe is correct, because you've cared about them in the onboarding process and learned about them throughout the life of their career with you. It makes it a lot easier to keep those communication channels open.
So I wanted to ask my last question, and this is the toughest of all. Are you ready for this one? So we've covered a lot of territory, right? And our poor human brains can only take in and retain about two or three things at a time.
That's for sure.
So I would love to have you prioritize and say, if there was one thing that you wanted the audience that's consuming this podcast today, the one thing that's the most important to take away from dealing with all that chaos and creating a revenue machine for the organization, what do you want them to take away?
That's easy for me. That's actually the easy thing. Relationships are the best part of the entire journey, right? There is not, I don't remember how much revenue here or how much EBITDA there. Like those things I can read about. What I do remember are the people I've gotten to care about or have cared about me along the way and those relationships that I've formed. So I think that the easiest part for me is look to your left, look to your right, go get to know two or three people in your company and do it as often as you can. And I don't mean get to know what their title is. I mean, get to know them as a human, as a person that you genuinely care about without any expectation in return.
Well, that's brilliant. I'm going to tell you my one takeaway from our conversation here today is we spent 99.9% of the time talking about things that we need to do internally in order to create that company that has huge growth potential. Like our biggest obstacles for growth, and this is what all the C-suite executives have said that I've talked to, it's the internal challenges. If we want a scalable revenue machine, we got to look here first, right?
I think that's absolutely correct, Steve. It's always us, right? Who's your biggest competitor in life? What's your biggest challenge in life? It's yourself. So, and I think the same thing's true of companies. We stand in our own way and we can also solve our problems quicker than anything else. But we've got to work together. Everyone is a part of that solution. And if they're not, then they probably shouldn't be part of the company, right? Like they should probably do something else that they can contribute to, in a meaningful way.
Well, I just have to say, the mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives and insights from all of our years of experience as C-suite executives. And how do we share it with each other, our peer community, right? And if we do that right, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I just think you were a tidal wave lifting floats today.
Well, I hope
I
so,
thought it was
Steve.
fantastic.
I hope it helps. I really appreciate the conversation and really have enjoyed being here with you today.
Well, can I ask, because I know people are going to have questions for you, is it appropriate that we give a direct link to your LinkedIn profile that
Sure.
people could reach out?
I'm happy to have those conversations.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. And I have a feeling there's a series that we could be doing here, but I just wanted to say thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steve. It's great to be a part of your team and your podcast series. So much appreciated.